Hey there, welcome back to another episode of the BS Zone. I haven't done one of these in a long time, but when a friend of mine shared this article on my social media, on one of my social media accounts, it was so full of bullshit, I just felt like I had to stop what I was doing and record this video. So here we have an article from Vice by Larry Fitzmaurice called Old Man Marley is the Worst Character in Home Alone. And on top of that, he says, the classic holiday film is full of terrible characters, but one rises above the rest. So, this is an article that's, at this point, 4 years old. But, or at least very close to that. But it's a holiday season. Home Alone is considered a holiday classic to many, including myself. And as soon as I read this, I was just like, this is so stupid. This is such a daft and dumb article. It represents everything that I hate about writing about film on social media or on the internet. And I just felt like I had to take a stab at it, so to speak. Plant my own traps, if you will. Like a nail right through its foot. So, first off, it starts off the worst possible way. It starts off like a shovel to the face with a blunt opinion that's posited in a way as if it's not an opinion and it's trying to suggest that Home Alone is objectively a bad movie. When you start out with Home Alone is a bad movie, you were either trying to get clicks or you seem to think that your opinion is somehow not objective. I don't know which one is which. It could be a mix of both. Either way, it's a problem. Then it continues to hype up and pump up Vice, which is hilarious because Vice is nobody fucking cares about Vice nowadays. This site's a fucking ghost town. So it says, if you're a frequent visitor to this site, seeing this opinion stated here won't surprise you. We've said it before. And yes, they did. The article that's linked here is an article where, I shit you not, an author tries to make the argument that Home Alone is a piece of right-wing propaganda. And no, it's not a satire piece from The Onion. It's meant to be a serious opinion and a serious take. I rest my fucking case. But considering its deathless presence in the holiday film canon, it bears repeating. A film that arguably represents the exact moment that the late legendary storyteller and lifelong Chicagoan John Hughes' talents started to fade, Home Alone is a mean-spirited and outlandish, even for movies, tale of a family who hates their child just enough to forget to take him on vacation, and a child that spends time in solitude and increasingly panics without bothering to directly contact the authorities until the end of the film. It's a terrible movie for terrible people. Wow. You really had to go there. You butthurt baby. Like, seriously, this article is so butthurt and triggered. It's honestly pretty shocking. This is the kind of article that is clearly written from somebody who is so tired of seeing Home Alone every holiday. They're tired of Home Alone being considered a classic. They want other people to be on their same level. And it's also someone who clearly smells shit pretty much all the time. But in this instance, the shit is coming from themselves. It's emanating from their every pore because they're so full of shit that they're just constantly smelling shit in everything. Because they are, in essence, pieces of shit in their own right. Because they're so full of it. I mean, come on. Like, you're going to make arguments like that? Also, I hate these arguments from these fucking so-called critics that are criticizing films by not making decisions that would end the movie in 5 fucking minutes. Oh my god, Home Alone is bad and it's a terrible movie because the kid doesn't call the 911 right away and the movie doesn't end in 5 minutes. Wow. The writers really should have taken your advice, and they should have went that route. Because if they went that way, then Home Alone would have been an even bigger hit. I mean, this is the kind of shit that you think is satire. You think it's a joke, but it's reality, and it's pathetic, and it's honestly a little sad. And you have to go as low to say it's a terrible movie for terrible people? I mean, dude. The only thing terrible, or the only terrible person that I see when it comes to this particular piece is you for making such a statement. How about you stop being such a fucking bitter asshole and just enjoy Home Alone for what it is? Or don't enjoy Home Alone and shut up. Especially if you don't have anything valid to say. So he says, in my nearly 30 years of existence, however, I have not been able to stop watching Home Alone and the sequel Home Alone 2 Lost in New York. You haven't been able to? This whole piece so far is you've been saying you don't like the film, you think it's a terrible movie, and you're saying I haven't been able to stop watching it. What are you, a fucking sadist yourself? Like later in this piece, he starts to argue that the film is like sadistic and it's just full of sadistic violence. But here you are, someone who is clearly not a fan of the film and is at the very least masochistic. Maybe it's not sadism, but it's definitely masochism. Like you're a total masochist if you're willing to continuously watch this movie that you don't like. So he says, this is partially because similar to holiday movie counterparts like Love Actually, Jingle All the Way, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, watching Home Alone once every year has become a satisfying constant amidst the strum and drang that the holiday season can sometimes be. Family members may act reckless, travel plans may be a pain in the ass to schedule, but Home Alone is always there and comparatively it asks nothing of you. This particular part here where he says it asks nothing of you honestly makes me laugh because, like I said, like the first paragraph is him just shitting on the film and being bitter and being triggered about it. Going as far to say it's a terrible movie for terrible people. But then he says it asks nothing of you. Then what's your fucking problem, man? Seriously. I'm also continuously drawn to Home Alone because at its rotten core, the film functions as a study of some truly awful characters. The type of anti-heroes who make Breaking Bad look like, well, heroes. You're really going to make that comparison. You're going to, but hey, it's Vice. They're the ones that employed an author who wrote an article that said that Home Alone was a piece of right-wing propaganda and not just a movie that was just trying to make people laugh, had a nice heart to it, a decent message about, accepting, your family, despite all their flaws and their faults, which is what we really need to hear around the holidays, because there's a lot of stress that goes on during the holidays. But no, it's a political piece. And these characters are horrible and they're anti-heroes. How are they anti-heroes? How are these characters anti-heroes? Our protagonist, Kevin McAllister, is a child whose base instincts apparently include shoplifting, terrifying pizza delivery boys into thinking they're being held at gunpoint, and the type of sadistic violence that even the Saw filmmakers would likely blanch at. Oh, yeah, of course, the whole Home Alone is Saw for kids. That's so original. Here's the thing. Unlike Saw, none of this is meant to be taken seriously. This is a comedy. Everything is exaggerated. And it's also a way for Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern to showcase their inherent talents as physical comedians. I'm not laughing at these acts of violence because they're acts of violence. I'm not enjoying these acts of violence because they're acts of violence. I'm laughing my ass off at these moments that are violent because of Daniel Stern and Joe Pesci, because of their reactions, because of how they showcase their talents on screen. I mean, The whole stuff with the spider, I mean, getting hit with a crowbar, just their reactions are hilarious. It's not the violence itself that I'm like cackling at. It's the reactions. See, there's a big difference between the two. Also, what was Kevin supposed to do in this scenario? He went with what he knew. Micro machines, traps, stuff that, he could figure out and do himself. And he almost managed to outsmart these two bandits on his own. And also, it's a fun concept. It's a fun idea to have like these traps and everything, and have a kid home alone trying to take on these robbers with a slapstick point of view. Why do we have to say like, oh, Kevin's a sadist? Is he really? I mean, yes, he does get some enjoyment out of hitting these guys in the head with a paint can, but he's a fucking kid. Kids do a lot of crazy shit at that age. I mean, they'll be laughing at each other when they're shooting each other in the balls with fucking Nerf guns. Like, why, how is this really that much different? And in this case, I mean, how can you not laugh at, the wet bandits? I mean, they're jokes in themselves. So the shoplifting part, clearly you either didn't watch the movie when you wrote this article, or your memory of it is so hazy that you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. He was scared. He got scared in that moment and he ran. His inherent instinct is not shoplifting, because he still spent how much money at that fucking store later? He could have, if his inherent instinct was to shoplift, he would have just ran out with all of his groceries. He didn't, though, if I remember correctly. So either way, I mean, that's a pretty big stretch there to say that his inherent instincts are shoplifting. Terrifying pizza delivery boys and thinking of being held at gunpoint. Yeah, that's kind of shitty, but, kids can be trolls sometimes, and it's really not that big of a deal to me. It's such a minor nitpick. It's not really proof that Kevin is like some kind of anti-hero, this awful, terrible kid. I mean, I've seen much worse. It's not like he's the equivalent of his character in The Good Son. His mother and father are truly awful human beings. Let's set aside the whole child abandonment issue and focus on the fact that they made their children sit and coach while they enjoyed the luxury of first-class airfare. Okay, this is another massive stretch that's so big that you couldn't possibly make this stretch even with a Stretch Armstrong doll. Has this guy ever heard of things like family packages through businesses, for business trips or vacations, where they include 2 first-class tickets for the adults? There aren't planes that really have enough capacity usually in terms of first class to have multiple families in first class all the time. Also, it's never really explained whether or not it was a package or not. But at the end of the day, who fucking cares? Out of all the things you want to point to a reason why his mother and father are shitty people is the fact that they just dared to have some first class tickets and didn't sit and coach with their kids. Like, maybe their kids actually didn't want their parents to be there. Maybe the kids wanted some time to themselves. Maybe there's a relationship between the parents and the kids where they trust each other enough where they don't have to sit and coach together. You ever think about that? And it's not like in the film itself, the kids felt like they were in a shitty situation. I don't remember any scenes where any of the McAllister's kids were like, oh my God, fuck my parents, man. Parents are such losers for, not sitting and coach with us. Or not allowing us to sit in first class. I don't remember scenes like that, but maybe there was a scene like that. But either way, does it really fucking prove that they're shitty, awful human beings? No, it doesn't. The child abandonment issue, they fucked up. They made a mistake. And they spent a lot of time trying to find him. I mean, his mother went cross country and, rode in the back of a freezer truck, for fuck's sake, to try to get, back to her son. They didn't just abandon Kevin by himself and did nothing to try to get him back, or try to find him, or try to come home. That's not what happened. Actually, when they realized that they left Kevin behind, and then they tried to get a flight back, but they couldn't because shit was crazy. It's not that they just deliberately on purpose abandoned Kevin. They do have some problems. They're not perfect parents. They made a mistake by, taking Buzz's side in that whole situation, and the asshole Uncle Frank. But, here's the thing. It showcases that families aren't perfect. And despite the fact that families sometimes make mistakes, and your mother or your father might side with your asshole brother or your asshole uncle, and so on and so forth, that doesn't mean that, they should disappear. That's really what the core message of this film is. It's about family. It's about, despite their problems and their issues and the fact that they're not perfect, there still is that love and that care for, for their kids and for, the family as a whole. It's a more realistic portrayal of what family dynamic really is. There are moments like that where they make a mistake and they side with a side that is in retrospect not really the best side to side with in the first place, but they learn their lesson. Well, I mean, in the sequel they kind of didn't, but that's a whole other story. But but over the course of this film, they do learn their lesson. So does Kevin, because he, throughout this whole situation, he realizes that he truly does love his mom. He does love his dad. And, even Buzz, who's an asshole, he still loves them. They're still his family, and he didn't want them to disappear. So he says, okay, there's also the risible cheapness of Uncle Frank, the pointless cruelty exhibited by Buzz McAllister, and the cashier at the supermarket store doesn't even bother to question why a child is buying a ton of groceries by himself. What do you mean doesn't question? Didn't she ask him questions? If I remember correctly, I thought the cashier actually did ask him questions, but then Kevin explained some things, she bought his explanation, and, just let him go on his way. Also another massive stretch and another fucking nitpick. Why does that make the film terrible? Just because they allowed a kid to buy groceries by himself? Also, with what makes the cruelty exhibited by Buzz pointless? There's a point to it. The whole point is that despite the fact that he's, being a little shit, there's even a scene later in the film where Buzz actually does miss Kevin. And realizes that, he's his brother. We may not always get along, but he's still my brother. There's also the whole thing with, it's a setup. That's what it is. The cruelty is a setup for, Kevin to make this wish that his family would disappear. And then the sequence of events happen where he would get left behind, and he would wake up and he would be alone in his house, and his family would have actually disappeared. That's what the setup is. You can't have that setup without Buzz being an asshole, or Uncle Frank being a jerk, or any of these things. You can't have that setup without those moments. What, are you mad that Home Alone isn't squeaky clean? Jesus. So then he says, none are more arguably horrible, though, than Old Man Marley, the eerie man with a shovel lurking outside the McAllister house in the beginning of the film. Sadly, dear readers, you've been fooled by Hughes and director Chris Columbus's masterful emotional manipulation for Old Man Marley. In reality, he is a total piece of shit. I don't think anybody's been fooled. I think, the people who hired you to write this article, they were fools for allowing you to write such a piece like this. And, the only piece I see is you, because you're a piece of shit. For all of these fucking things that you've written, saying that Home Alone is not only a terrible movie, but it's a terrible movie for terrible people. Like, the moment you write shit like that, you're the one who's a piece of shit. Look in the mirror, smell yourself, and maybe realize at that moment, oh, fuck, man, I stink. Maybe I need to, change the way that I write. Maybe I need to not write pieces like this. Maybe he did. You know what? I hope he did. I hope after he wrote this and he got a lot of flack for it, I hope that, he eventually, retooled his writing style and didn't, resort to pieces like this. But I have my doubts. So it says, I know what you're saying. Old Man Marley is a saint. No, I'm not saying he's a saint. He had his problems. Remember, there was even a moment in the film that specifically showed that he's flawed. He had this argument with his son, and things got heated, and he just decided to break off his relationship with his son and didn't want to, deal with the stress. Didn't want to, be around him anymore. And it was Kevin who got him to see the light and willingly go out and reach out to his son, for the holidays. Either you didn't watch the movie or you were just making shit up. And that's the thing. When you want to make a hit piece like this, you better use real bullets, not fucking blanks. So okay, he says the only reason he exists in this film is to teach Kevin to have a broader sense of compassion toward others and not to judge a book by its cover. It's not the only reason. It's also for Old Man Marley himself to learn a lesson and to let things go and to be willing to compromise and to accept his own faults and his own flaws as a human being. Sadly, dear readers, you've been fooled by John Hughes and director Chris Columbus's masterful emotional manipulation. He's a piece of shit. How? Okay, please, enlighten me. Let's consider the evidence by tracing Old Man Marley's character development throughout the film. In Home Alone's opening minutes, we first see him shoveling snow and looking slightly menacing as Buzz, Kevin, and Jeff McAllister talk trash and spread lies about how scary he is. Kind of mean. As the film's hijinks kick in, Marley takes a narrative backseat until resurfacing around the film's midsection when he runs into Kevin in the drugstore, triggering the toothbrush shoplifting chase scene that so many know and love. Yeah, he shoplifted, but he was understandably scared. He's a kid. He's already been through a lot of stress because his family disappeared overnight, and he's now trying to deal with shit all by himself, and he sees the old man who his brothers have been talking about is a fucking serial killer. Yeah, I think I would be kind of scared too if I were that age and I was in that situation, and I really probably wouldn't be caring about fucking paying for a damn toothbrush at that point because I would be running my ass out of town. Now, the way this scene plays out is truly bizarre. When Marley and Kevin lock eyes, the latter's face carries a distinct look of terror, the kind of terror that a small child feels when seeing a stranger they find threatening. This look is unmistakable. You think that Marley, a grown adult with several generations of children under his family tree, would be able to recognize it and at least address maybe and diffuse the situation. Instead, he essentially stares Kevin down wordlessly in a manner that would scare me, a fellow grown adult who should also know better than an intimidated child who's clearly out of his element. Oh yeah, so this scene apparently is Old Man Marley deliberately trying to intimidate Kevin by just looking at him. Like, here, okay. Let's do a thought experiment. What if Old Man Marley did actually intervene? Kevin would still run away because Kevin has been indoctrinated with this belief by his brothers and other friends that Old Man Marley is a serial killer who will bury kids' bodies or body parts in a fucking trash can. And why the fuck would he not be scared by him? And it's also another setup for not judging a book by its cover. It's all set up for that reason. How are you going to continue to have that message work throughout this film by not having more scenes like that really strengthen that message? That just because he looks creepy, just because he doesn't automatically intervene and try to be like, no kid, I'm not trying to scare you. Why would you think that he would automatically think that the kid is scared of him? Why? Maybe he just thinks the kid might be dealing with other things in his life. Why would it automatically pop in his head just because he's had kids that, oh my God, he thinks I'm scary. I better try to defuse the situation. It's not a bomb. This isn't the fucking Hurt Locker. This is Home Alone. But okay. All right. Another massive over exaggeration by this writer to try to show that old Man Marley is a piece of shit by not even really doing anything. Okay. Old Man Marley's penultimate scene in Home Alone is meant to essentially defang the character itself, to show that he's not all bad, and that both he and Kevin have lessons to teach each other. They already showed the lessons early in the film, in the church scene. Why are you missing that? Why are you missing that scene? But then he goes talks about it. You know, he talks about taking a seat next to Kevin. If I remember correctly, that happened afterwards, didn't it? Didn't that happen after? I mean, that happened before. You know, hit him in the shovel. And yeah, it actually did. Yeah. Once again, you clearly didn't watch the movie before you wrote this, because you're trying to act like, oh, this is the scene that does it. But prior to that scene, in the church, when Kevin was trying to hide from those, you know, from the characters, you know, from the robbers, there's that whole scene. But okay, he even has a problem with that, though. He does bring that in later in this paragraph. So he takes a seat next to Kevin in the church. And then this is the scene that he's actually talking about. Okay, so then he goes on later and he talks about the sequence when, you know, he saves Kevin from the wet bandits. So my bad. I'm just so worked up and heated by this bullshit article that, you know, I got things a little mixed up. But we're on the right track now. So he takes a seat next to Kevin in the church, tells him that all the rumors about him being a spooky-ass old man aren't true, starts growing off about how he's secretly here to watch his granddaughter sing in the church choir because he said some ill shit to his son, haven't talked to each other in years. Yeah? What's the problem with that? In the midst of all this social solapism, not once does old man Marley ask himself, why is this child alone in church on Christmas Eve? How come this child, who is a next-door neighbor and definitely has a family, is constantly alone every time I've seen it in the past few days? Because it's a movie! It's a fucking movie. It's a movie called Home Alone. In order for the film to work, especially when you get to the climax, Kevin has to be home alone. What? Oh, he's gonna, you know, you're just gonna have him call the cops. Then Kevin won't be alone anymore, and we won't have a fucking movie. Think, McFly, think. Obviously, no one at this point would accuse old man Marley of proper adulting. I don't know. I think he's been doing fine. It seems like a lot of kids have been assuming a lot of fucked up shit about him over the years based on not even knowing him personally and just spreading rumors and gossip, okay? But his behavior during Home Alone's explosive Rube Goldberg, come itchy and scratchy, burglar trap centerpiece. I love how he mentions itchy and scratchy. I'm really surprised that he has even actually watched Simpsons or Itchy and Scratchy, because he gets triggered over this film and its violence. So I'm really surprised that he actually watched enough of that to make that reference. But he says that cements him truly as a baffling, immoral human being. Like you? Maybe you just see yourself in some of these things, and you write these articles as a backdoor way to prove your own immoral thoughts and opinions, and to show how you are a piece of shit. If your memory's rusty, I'll set this one up for you. It's not as rusty as yours. Kevin enacts his master plan against the wet bandits. He places an anonymous phone call to 911 before luring the robbers to the house next door. I could dwell on the logical fallacies of this plot point, but time is money. How about you don't dwell on any of this, because all of your dwelling has just piled up more and more bullshit to the point where I don't even know how you are going to cram even more bullshit into this article at this point. I think you're going to have to invent new ways to cram even more bullshit into this article. But I'm not going to, bet against this guy. So the wet bandits find Kevin at the house, and for a brief moment they have him right where they want him. That is, before the old man Marley shows up and bonks them both of them on the head with that fucking shovel before whisking Kevin away from the scene. So he's a hero, right? Yeah, he is. Here's the thing, though. In the following scene, Kevin McAllister is sitting comfortably in his own home watching the robbers get carted away by the cops. He looks comfortable. How is that a problem? The cops have got him. The bandits. They're getting taken away. The terror that he was dealing with is over. He even waves tauntingly at them behind a curtain. There's no indication that he's spoken with the cops. Why does everything have to be spelled out? Why does everything have to be spelled out for you in a movie? Why is this a problem for some people? It didn't tell me point blank. It didn't have a scene where the cops, talk to Kevin, so the movie's terrible. No, your opinion is terrible. Who arguably the cops could also help him out with the whole being home alone without his parents deal. Again, the movie would be fucking over in 5 minutes if the cops were called as soon as he realized that he couldn't take on these robbers himself, or he was missing his family. Or that the cops were even aware of his role in this bizarre plan he's realized. Why do the cops need to be aware of this whole thing? It's not a fucking example of nonfiction. It's not a crime drama based on a true story. It's a over-the-top family comedy. It's not fucking CSI. We're led to believe by extension that Old Man Marley has also aided and abetted Kevin in hiding his involvement in the robbers' downfall. There's nothing that shows that he did aid and abet or hid anything. And what do you mean aid and abet? These guys were trying to break into his house and they were trying to kill him. He was just defending himself. How is Kevin in trouble? Why should he be in trouble? Because he actually dared to defend himself with traps and stuff? It's not like he killed them. They still got caught. And the cops have been looking for these guys for months. So why do you think the cops would all of a sudden be like, you know what, Kevin, you were going to charge you with assault on the wet bandits? The fuck out of here. This bullshit. And that he likely didn't bother to ask Kevin why he was in his flooded neighbor's apartment alone with 2 strange men, or more importantly, where his parents are in all of this. Why the fuck does he have to ask that? And the setup is so Old Man Marley can show up and surprise the audience. Just when you think Kevin's gonna get it, here comes Marley to help him. Kevin can't do it himself, and here comes somebody who's an unexpected hero. That's the whole point of that setup with Marley and the shovel. Why do we need any of that shit? Why do we need, Old Man Marley have a scene where he's asking Kevin, why are you here in the neighbor's apartment? Why is the apartment flooded? Right? It would just ruin the flow of the film. People would be watching this movie in the theater and audibly saying things like, what the fuck? What is the point of this? After he hits the robbers with the shovel, and if he just stopped and said, Kevin, why are you in your neighbor's house? Why is their house flooded? Did you flood the house, Kevin? Where are your parents? People would be like, what the fuck is this shit? And that arguable apathy is what makes Old Man Marley's actions throughout Home Alone so highly detestable. What apathy? He fucking risked his life to save this kid. What are you talking about, apathy? He risked his life, smacked these guys in the head, saved the kid, got him out of that situation. He spoke to Kevin in the church earlier. He could have just not given him the light of day and could have just been like, fuck you, kid. I don't want to talk to you right now. I just want to watch my granddaughter sing. He could have done that, but he didn't. He listened to Kevin, and ultimately he took Kevin's advice and actually went up and called his son, and they patched things up. You're the detestable one. Larry, and people like you who write these kind of bullshit articles. So Kevin's parents truly screwed the film's ultimate pooch, yes, but at least they show a measure of emotion toward the situation as well as a willingness to find a solution. Old Man Marley, on the other hand, is maybe the only adult who has a fraction of a chance in helping Kevin reunite with his family, at least find the adult supervision he so clearly needs. Several fractions of a chance, really all of which he doesn't even attempt to take, because it's a setup for the film. Why would you have scenes where he would actually willingly try to get a family member involved, go in and try to call the police? And I think he also, here's another, example of why this guy didn't clearly watch the movie, because the film showed numerous instances of the police being kind of incompetent and kind of not being that helpful. So maybe even if you did try to get them, maybe they wouldn't have really helped that much to begin with. Also, you have one of the cops who is not really a cop, Joe Pesci, just impersonating a cop. How about that problem? How are the cops allowing this guy to continuously to impersonate a police officer and constantly go inside people's homes? Why don't they get on that? But at the end of the day, really? Old Man Marley is a piece of shit because he didn't want to end the movie in 5 minutes. That's basically what this article consists of, after multiple paragraphs of steaming bullshit. So, at the end of Home Alone, Kevin looks out his window once more to see Old Man Marley reuniting with his own family, which makes for some nice narrative symmetry that is nonetheless an undeserved resolution. It's not undeserved at all. It's very well deserved. Old Man Marley realizes his own inherent problems and why his relationship with his son fell apart. And he does, what he can to rebuild it. It may never be the same, but he went out there, put his hand out, called his son spoke back, you got to see his grandkids. What is undeserved about that? He went out there and he did it. He took Kevin's advice. The film's ultimate lesson is that Kevin needs his family, but when the credits rolled, it's hard to believe that Old Man Marley even deserves his. What a piece of shit. What a heartless bastard this guy is. God. I mean, it's just shocking. It's shocking. Either he's a epic troll, but I don't think he's smart enough or clever enough for that. It's Vice. We're talking about Vice here. I don't think this is actually a legitimate piece of satire. Just like that other article about how Home Alone is a right-wing propaganda piece. I skimmed through that, and that's not a satire. So, yeah, I just, wow. So just a bunch of bitter, bullshit, butthurt, ranting from someone who really should just have their own personal blog as the only platform to spew this kind of swill. Anyway, I don't really know what else to say about this. I'm spent. I hope you enjoyed listening to me rant on this, and I'll probably do some more rants like this in the future on other bullshit articles, because as distressing, as disheartening, and as upsetting as it is to read some of these articles, it admittedly is a little fun to let loose and to just unleash the beast on them. So anyway, thanks for watching, and as always, I'll see you later. See ya.